Hello everybody, welcome back. This is Doomed Friend, and today we're going to be going over Mag. Mag is one of my favorite frames in Warframe. I have a ton of time on her, and I just wanted to talk to you guys about her. Lots of people ask questions about how you play certain frames and what are certain frames, and I wanted to start making videos explaining those frames. But today we're going to be starting with my one and only, my wife, Mag. Now, Mag is a really interesting frame because she is one of the 3 starting frames in the game. She's described as the Warframe using magnetic power, and that super vague and ominous description really does not do justice to how powerful and how awesome this frame is. First, let's talk about her passive. So Mag's passive gives you Vacuum, which is a Sentinel mod, which allows you to pick up items and have them gravitate towards you. Mag's passive gives you that, and the Vacuum mod actually stacks on top of it, but Mag's passive draws in items from the environment and pulls them to you. I think that's really awesome. It's more gimmicky than anything. It's not inherently useful because you could essentially have the same effect by having a Sentinel that has Vacuum on it, but this is still a cool effect, and since it does stack with Vacuum, you can make the range really far. So Mag's first ability is called Pull. Wherever you're aiming, you grab those enemies and you yank them towards you. This yanking motion actually ragdolls the enemies and makes them kind of go flying. This is super fun to use in early game. It can be very devastating to those early game enemies. You can use this to kill enemies, and although it starts dropping off fairly quickly for the damage, the CC and ragdoll and just overall fun of this ability stays consistent. The augment mod for this ability is Greedy Pull. This augment mod adds the ability for not only enemies to be yanked by Mag, but also items. So you can pull items to yourself, get you that extra loot. Now, Mag's second ability is Magnetize. Magnetize is, I think, where Mag's name comes from, and essentially you select a target and create a bubble around that target. All projectiles within the range, including the projectiles from the enemy, get sucked into the middle of the bubble, which would be where the original target is. Any enemies who walk into the bubble slowly gravitate toward the center. Now, if these enemies are shooting at you, they're generally not running very quickly, and they can be easily dragged into the center of the bubble. However, enemies can dodge and dash and run out of the bubble if they so choose, as long as they're not the original target. The original target has the bubble following them at all times. The augment mod for this ability allows you to detonate the magnetized bubble early. This is kind of useful. I haven't found that many uses for it, but you know, it has its moments. Magnetize is best used as an ability to control zones and control choke points, since you can throw it on an enemy in a choke point and all the enemies that walk through it take a crap ton of damage, but everybody has their own play style with Mag. Mag's third ability is called Polarize. Polarize is a really interesting ability. Essentially what it does is it strips the armor and shields off of enemies and gives some of that power back to you, so you can get over shields by doing that. A fun little gimmick of this ability is so if there are 10 enemies lined up in a row, it'll strip the armor from the first enemy, and then the second enemy will not only strip the armor, but it'll deal some of the damage from the armor that you stripped from the previous enemy. So this ability, the longer it lasts, the further it reaches out, the more enemies it hits, it actually does exponentially more damage. This is really fun in high-level Grineer missions, since there are no nullifiers to cancel out your ability, and a lot of the Grineer have a lot of armor. That way you can just absolutely melt entire groups of enemies. The augment mod for this ability is Counterpulse, which makes enemy weapons jammed and disabled for 4 seconds when they get hit by Polarize. This is a fun little CC ability. I haven't really found much use in it, but it is fun to use if you're using Mag as a support frame, since you don't even have to strip the armor and shields off of the enemy for Counterpulse to work. Mag's fourth ability, and one of her most notable abilities, is Crush. During Crush, Mag lifts up the enemies and smashes them together, crushing their bones. Now, Crush is a really powerful move, however it's seen as kind of a fault since not only it does CC and do a lot of damage, but it is a little bit expensive of an ability, and it makes it so you can't move for several seconds. So people call it a good CC ability for enemies, but it also CCs Mag. This ability scales really well all the way into late game, and can be used in early game to destroy large groups of enemies. The augment mod for Crush has survivors' armor decreased by 50% and they become unable to move for 7 seconds. So Crush's augment mod makes this even better of a CC ability, since it makes it so they have to take longer to be able to move. And if you don't feel like spamming Polarize, this is a good ability to strip enemies of armor. Now, how do you get Mag, now that you have seen some of her abilities in action and you are kind of interested? Well, one easy way to obtain Mag is to start the game with her. She is one of the 3 starting frames, like I mentioned earlier, and that is honestly the easiest way to obtain the frame, is to just start out with her. The other way to obtain her is to fight the boss at Iliad on Phobos. As many would agree, Mag is the easiest Warframe in the game to farm for, because the boss you have to kill to get her parts is by far the easiest boss in the game. With a well-placed Tigris Prime shot, you can nearly one-shot this boss. Many Warframe abilities are largely effective against this boss, and even though he is a boss and slightly stronger version of a Corpus enemy, he's just that, a slightly stronger version. If you can easily take out high-level Eximus Corpus enemies, this boss is no problem. Now, since Mag is one of the starting frames, some people decide, hey, why don't I just start with her? I heavily recommend against doing that. Mag is an excellent frame, and I started with her and absolutely love her and have been playing her ever since. But Mag is not a good starter frame compared to the other 2. Not only can you get her very early on, so if you don't start with her, you can get her pretty early on in the process, but her abilities are not always as great as the other 2 Warframe's abilities. Excalibur is a very good frame early on and scales really fast, meaning that he is very effective early game. However, he kind of plateaus and stops being effective late game. Volt is relatively effective early game, and for him to be massively effective late game, it requires a very different setup. However, Volt is still extremely powerful. Volt's actually the most well-rounded out of the 3. Mag has a couple very good abilities early game, but because of her kit and the requirements to make her kit good, it is not as easy to use her early game, since she requires some heavy building for her to be massively effective. Mag is really better of an end game frame than she is of an early game frame. You'll definitely love her early on, but the problem with Mag is she does require building to be more effective. While Excalibur can use his 4 and kill tons of things, Mag requires more building than that. Anyway, that is Mag in a nutshell. This is my favorite frame. If you guys want to see any more frames, you want to learn about any more frames, let me know down below. I have obtained almost every single Warframe in the game, with the exception of Baruch and Garuda, obviously, because, well, not obviously, I could farm for them now, I just haven't had the chance to farm for them. But I have nearly all of the other frames, and I have played all of the other frames at some point in time. So, if you want me to look at some of the frames, try them out, and recommend some things to you guys, let me know. I might also post a video on how to play Mag late game, and I'll post my build for her at that point. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Peace out, bros.